All right, welcome everybody to the Parks and Rec Commission. Tonight is March 24th, 6 p.m., and I'm going to call the meeting to order. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As a reminder, turn off all your cell phones if you haven't already, and we'll go into roll call.
Braithwaite,
Present.
Patterson,
Here.
Cornwall,
Present.
Noyes.
Present.
And are there any amendments to the agenda? None? None. Any declaration of conflict from the commission? None? And let's see, the consent calendar, citizen issues. And we'll jump directly into our unfinished business, which would be the first item is the election of chair and vice chair. Do we have I'll just nominate myself for chair.
I will second.
And just for meeting minutes, since I'm new, so Braithwaite, you nominated yourself.
Yes.
Noyes, you seconded. Thank you.
And do I have a nomination for vice chair?
I'll nominate Krista.
I'll second that. Krista, do you accept?
I would accept, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So are we going with both chair and vice chair in one motion?
If that's all right.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Just want to get it for the record.
Next up would be the Corbin Dog Park concept adoption.
Good evening, members of the Park and Rec Commission. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner. I'm here this evening to present the site plan concept for the Corbin Dog Park for your comment and adoption. So if you recall last month's meeting, I brought this forward for your review and mentioned that I would be bringing it back for adoption at this meeting. And since that time, we were able to reach out to the city of Coeur d'Alene with their Parks Department, just seeking some feedback and some thoughts on our original concept. And they came back with a couple of suggestions. So I have brought it forward with a couple tweaks that I'll kind of review and go over for your thoughts and input. So the main one being kind of how they looked at our site being fairly large of a dog park, about 1.5 acres, and how we had set it up with the large dog, small dog. Their input was our small dog area was very large and probably unnecessary from their experience. And it would be more or probably better suited to set up the site as two similar sized areas that we could potentially close one down for certain times of the year, whether it be the spring, the fall, the winter, maintenance, etc., and still have one completely open. That way, if we're dealing with a lot of maintenance issues, just with the dogs tearing up the park, the grass we needed to grow back, we can shut one down for a month, open it, go, flip-flop back and forth if we need to. So that's kind of the first change we made. But in doing that, we still wanted to provide small dog areas within these two spaces now. So as you can kind of see where my cursor is, there's a space right here and right here. So both at the entrance of each of these areas. And again, that's still a necessity even from their perspective, but they kind of viewed them more as being used for aggressive dogs. So when dogs, they're trying to socialize them more, that might be where these spaces become a little more useful than really a small dog area. So that's kind of the first main change. And then the second suggestion they had was creating a fully paved looped path. So if you recall in the previous version, We had concrete going to the shelter, but that was about it, and the rest was a gravel path. And just with kind of how much of a wet season we do have, especially with winters like this where it's little snow but a lot of rain, it's just a better environment for the users to have a paved trail. And another bonus is we don't have to worry about the dogs kicking up the gravel and mixing with the lawn and that sort of thing. So those are the two main changes. Everything else is pretty much the same parking lot, the CXT, the 2 shelters. And then we did get rid of the synthetic turf just because it was getting really congested with all the different areas now. It would have created more seams, which would have probably led to more maintenance inputs. But we did create larger gravel areas. So this yellow color is either a kind of a coarse sand gravel or a decomposed granite type material that'll compact, but again be a very hardened surface where the majority of the dogs are at least going to be interacting. So those are kind of the main summaries. I open up for any questions, and again seeking your input, and then ultimately the adoption of this plan.
So the way it's presented right now, the fence line, can you just with your cursor go on the big area where the fence line is going to be?
Right
so
here.
Straight down the middle?
Yep.
And then,
So just due to the size and the layout, it's not quite half and half. This one's about 0.6 acres. This one's about 0.8. But the previous version, it was about a half acre to an acre. Okay. So they're closer to the same size, but still not perfectly.
okay. And then for the small dog or the aggressive dog areas, are we putting anything in there as far as like, I don't know?
There will be a bench in there. They're kind of hard to see. You can kind of see one right here. A bench, and there'll be some boulders, but again, they're very small spaces, so there's not really a whole lot. And they will be all compacted gravel, so it is going to be accessible that way as well.
Yeah, looks good to me.
Yeah, I think the addition of the paved surfaces is a good idea.
And that's all going to be natural grass?
Yes. So the inside will be standard turf irrigated grass, and outside of the trail will be more of a natural grass.
Nice. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
I think it's going to be a nice addition.
Yeah. Any other questions from the board or from the commission? No? So at this point, do we need to make a motion to adopt?
Correct. That's what I'd be looking for, yes.
Okay. I make a motion to adopt it as shown.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
thank you. And we did approve the engineering design with JUB at the last council meeting. So we haven't started yet. Obviously, I was waiting for this adoption, but their contract is approved, so we'll begin shortly on the engineering for the parking lot and the hardscapes and that sort of thing.
And when is this planned on being completed?
We're still going through the budget cycle, but ideally, if everything goes to plan, we would complete design this year and then put it out to bid this winter to construct in 2027.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Next item to discuss would be our 2026 meeting and workshop schedule.
Yeah, so if you recall from last meeting, we had just thrown this out there to discuss schedule. The commission had decided to table that to wait for more members. We have since had some members
They all left.
drop off, so you are the decision makers in the room for the schedule. Some of you provided some feedback how you liked the formal and then the workshop kind of an alternating. So staff kind of went back and took that input, and then based on time of year and just things that we know that have happened in the past that worked well, we threw up this schedule. It's something that it's just a kind of a recommendation based again on your feedback and then kind of staff massaging it but after the meeting last time. So it's not, you don't have to take this, but I really don't like this microphone, but this is just kind of a suggestion from staff. So feel free to discuss and tweak and I don't really believe we need a motion on this. This is administrative. We can just make this, but we just wanted some input on
Okay.
what you guys wanted to see for a meeting cadence.
Okay. Debbie, yours is frozen. This is what they're,
Yes. No, I'm
Did
good.
something.
this is what they're proposing
Oh.
for. Looks like April would be a 5 o'clock workshop prior to the meeting, and then a 6 o'clock formal meeting
Down
here in the
there.
council chambers,
Okay.
which I'm in favor of that. I think that would be kind of an interesting thing to
That'd
try.
be a good idea.
And then May is off month. June would be a formal meeting here in the council chambers. I would say depending on how next month's workshop goes, we could decide to do the workshop again prior to the formal meeting. Totally up to, what are you guys' thoughts on any of that?
Let me skip.
I think that would be
Workshop.
pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing I would change is November and December. I think you want to change,
That is true.
you don't want the meeting right at Christmas time.
Right.
Yeah, and I think traditionally we've skipped December.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Exactly. And I
Is
would
there
just use
something
this for-
specific on why December is no longer a skip month?
I don't recall. I think we looked at the usual meeting time, and it was Thanksgiving week. But again, you're going to run into that with Christmas as well. So either way, there's probably going to be scheduling difficulties. So yeah, we can certainly make that change. And Amber did let me know this is listed as an action item on the agenda, so you can kind of put it, make a motion with that tweak if that's what you want to do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so Thanksgiving typically falls the third week of November. Is that accurate?
It is always on the fourth Thursday of November.
Fourth Thursday. Okay. So we're good other than December. November?
Yeah, I would say if we can flip November and December,
Yeah.
have December be our skip month. Other than that, I think it's great. I think I'll make a motion to accept this with the change of flipping November and December.
I'll second.
Who seconded?
Jeez.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And now on to new business. I'm sorry. So all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
And then for the next one, I believe it's me. Sorry, Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, no, park naming policy.
Yeah, I'm going to go over here just because, I don't know, I have trouble pushing a button and looking at my paperwork and talking because sometimes I use my hands. So I'm just going to move over here. So yeah, pretty straightforward. I hope the commission had a chance to review this and look it over beforehand. Any questions on the park naming? Oh, I will preface before I ask that a little bit of background. So as I came on board, legal team kind of was looking at this and noticed it was pretty out of date. So they updated it, kind of sent it to me, and then I made some tweaks and we kind of worked with it. And we came up with this just as a way of updating. No real major changes, just kind of a revision to the policy. So having said that, it's pretty straightforward what it is, kind of a solid and consistent mechanism for evaluating and selecting names for city-owned parks and facilities. Any questions on that or any on the policy as presented? or any suggestions or any discussion? I guess I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
None from me. No, it looked pretty straightforward.
Okay. I caught one thing that I will turn your attention to under definitions, where it says exceptional community service means outstanding service provided to the community. And then it says in more than one of the following areas, which could mean obviously two or more. I don't know why we would require two. I think one is sufficient. I think the intent was just one or more. So I would recommend, if you're good with everything else, just that one tweak instead of more than one, that it say one or more of the following areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're good with that, we just look for a motion to, what we're doing is actually recommending this, I believe, to City Council, and then they'll adopt it. So a motion with that change, if you're good with that change, and then I think we're good.
So you need a motion on that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make that a motion. The qualification is one or more.
And then the rest of the policy as presented.
Right.
Perfect, thank you.
And who seconded?
I'll second.
And Noyes, your vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Cornwall?
Aye.
Patterson? Thank you.
And next we have citizen comment from Post Falls Little League.
Good evening, members of the commission. Brian Myers, the Parks Manager. And you may have noticed an article in the press recently outlining the citizen comment that happened this past Tuesday at City Council. At that meeting, members of our local Little League organization and a couple other baseball programs, mostly youth-based, reached out to council to make them aware of what they view as exceedingly large fees for field use for their programs. So I'd like to just give you an update to that, since it was it's particular to Park and Rec and your work here, and kind of walk through where we've been with that organization over the past, inputs that staff has, our operating agreement that we have with that organization, and then kind of on the back end of that, kind of frame this in some larger policy discussion that ties back to that CAPRA policy, or the CAPRA project that we had talked about at a previous meeting, and also our 2020 Park and Rec Master Plan. So outlining and kind of framing the context of what concerns were brought forward to City Council, what I heard was the primary concern was the cost of reservation use of the fields. They cited a number of $12,000 a year to utilize the fields for their purposes. In reviewing that, and we'll get into the details of that a little bit, and I wish I had a PowerPoint, but from Tuesday afternoon till Friday of our publishing deadline, it was a little too tight to pull that together and have an exhibit. So I'm gonna have to talk in some general numbers, and I know that's hard to think through, but it's where we're at with the time frame for the formal meeting. So that was theme one. Theme two was that our neighboring communities don't charge anything for their Little League organizations to utilize their facilities for the same type of activity. Theme three was that they are having to compete against other out-of-city and out-of-state and adult programs for access to fields, and that generally we don't have enough fields in the community to meet the need of baseball uses. And they had a desire for greater access and a full, complete fee waiver for youth sports activities. So, baseball in general is why I'm here. I wouldn't have gotten into Parks and Rec if it wouldn't have been for that Little League organization and the American Legion baseball program. I spent a lot of hours investing my youth time into managing fields, and one of the points that council heard and stated at the end was, I think it's very important for youth to learn how to run a landscape rake. Councilor Ziegler shared that sentiment, and I think that's very true to the operating agreement that we have in place with Little League, is that it reflected that historic service that the organization provided to the city in maintaining the fields that we had 20 plus years ago. And that MOU was structured in such a way that the Little League organization was offered a 2-week head start on reservations. So they get a 2-week running start. We open up reservations generally for all public March 1st. Little League organization gets access February 15th as a part of that MOU. They don't have to make payment for any of the reservations that they make until March 31st. They also get a 50% discount of whatever the established fee is by council. To recognize that historic maintenance of the facility and the desire for young men and women to learn how to operate a landscape rake, they get a waiver of any field prep fees with the acknowledgement that that is their role and responsibility for their own uses. So that comes off the top, unless they ask for it. If they ask for it, then we will provide that service. But otherwise, we would not be providing that service. Generally, the city would then handle the operations and maintenance of the field outside of the dirt itself. So we're responsible for mowing, irrigating, and maintenance of the structures that support the activity. Separate from that operating agreement, Little League is also, two other things that are included in the operating agreement. Little League has exclusive access during their season to the 2 concession stands at Sportsman's and another storage building at that location. And lastly, that any field improvements that they would make to city infrastructure could be deducted from their total fee. So in-kind donation, if you will, which they have leveraged over the years, as we'll see later. Those separate improvements do require an agreement of sorts. And depending on the value, it may have to go to council for adoption and acceptance prior to construction of something large. The city's role and responsibility, again, is maintaining the overall infrastructure and care and maintenance. So generally what that looks like is a once-a-week field drag and then general maintenance if there's some other user that happens to be using the field. And then the mowing operations, replacement of fencing, upgrades to dugouts, roofs, that sort of thing. Outside of that operating agreement, Little League's also been afforded the ability to post 4x8 banners on the outfield fence during their season. So just a field use snapshot. Little League is in fact the majority user of our fields. They represent greater than 50% of the total use of all of our fields, including that of our own programs. Secondary to that program would be our own uses, primarily at Chase Fields. And I would say that's even a larger dramatic impact in the months of April, May, and June. After June, Little League's use typically drops off for the most part, but there is still some presence. And in 2023 in particular, they did run a late summer fall league that was generally more of a select travel ball type activity. And in that particular year, as a result, they had a higher fee. They also elected for additional field preps, largely outside of the MOU and associated with that travel ball type activity. So just to give some round numbers, 19th Street in 2025, 370 reserved hours for that one facility. Brett James was close to that with 365. The Chase fields each came in at about 270 hours per field. For context, that's total use of all users. The city use of Chase is about 150 hours per field. Little League's was around 100 hours per field. 19th and Brett James. 19th Street, it's basically 95% of all those hours are Little League. Brett James, it's about a 50-50 split between Little League and all other users. We don't have anything but our Movie in the Park program at that location. Kind of walking through where we've been for fees associated with field use. Dating back to 2015, we were at $10 an hour with a $25 prep fee. That increased the next year on the prep fee piece. The hourly rate stayed the same. At that point, the prep fee went to $35. In 2021, the MOU was established, but the couple of years prior to that, we operated under the general framework of the MOU. At that time, we were also handling the reservations for school district owned and managed facilities other than the high school. So all of those years prior, some of the fees included fees associated with school district sites, not just city sites. And in 2015, there was an invoice that was in that $12,000 to $14,000 range. So we have seen fees that reflected what was stated at council, but it has been some time. In 2023, we increased our hourly rate to $15 an hour. And that was just on the heels of our Tullamore Port Sportsfield Complex plan, now known as the Corey Sportsfield Complex plan, where we did a cost recovery analysis and kind of outlined what a fee would be for a facility like that. And within that plan, it identified an hourly rate of $20 an hour. And we'll get into some of that larger discussion towards the end. 2026, so in the fall of 25, council increased the hourly, or we provided a recommendation to increase that fee to that $20 an hour rate that was consistent with the Tullamore Sports Complex plan, and increased the prep fee to $50 an hour. So that's where we stand today in terms of the hourly rates. We didn't provide advance notice to Little League that those fees were going to increase, and this may be the first time that they've heard that those fees have increased to that rate. So they're currently booking at the same 50% of the $15 at $7.50 an hour, and that's the plan for this year. Mm-hmm. And they don't have the field prep fee, so that's not material to that part of the discussion. Going back over how this is actually played out in terms of their use. Total field use generally runs between 650 hours, 650 to 700, with the exception of the 2023 season when they ran that additional fall league. They ran about a 900-hour season. In that 2023 season, that was the highest total fees accrued, and that was $9,300. The shortest year or smallest year total fees were $3,460. In each of those years, in 2021, we accepted a donation of a scoreboard improvement, and that scoreboard improvement replaced the scoreboard at Brett James and provided a new scoreboard at 19th. That provided a credit of $8,500. That went multiple years. So the first year that they paid was 2022. The total due to the city was $3.50. In 2023, with all of those additional fall programs and such, their total paid after a donation of a portable mound of $2,500 value, their total paid was $5,378. In 24, they didn't have any donations that season, but their total due ended up being $2,476. And in 2025, they were in that same $22,000 range for total due. So just for some operational context, the Tullamore Sports Complex for 5 fields identified in 2020 operational cost, and those were for synthetic infields. Operational cost at about $95,000 annually for 5 fields. It also looked for a cost recovery of about 85%. So that was the charge, was to try to build a fee structure and such to recover 85% of basically $100,000. So tying that back to what we're doing now, Sportsman's Park, our mowing operations are roughly 240 hours is what we have documented for the 2025 season. And the general maintenance and labor includes bathroom cleaning and some other things that may not specifically be to the fields and such. We were sitting at about 2,300 hours total for that complex. Sorry, 1,300 hours for that complex. Should have printed this slightly larger. For that regional context, to discuss the what other communities are doing, called Coeur d'Alene, they adopted an MOU or accepted an MOU with their Little League organization for Little League to use the Canfield Sports Complex, which is a shared site with the school district and Parks and Rec. They gain access to 4 fields at that location, exclusive for their season. And they also get access to 2 other fields for practice only. And the fee for that utilization is $4,000. They do have the in-kind donation part of that agreement, or similar to what we have for that agreement. They also have tied a 5% annual escalator to that contract, and they'll review it every 5 years. City of Hayden is somewhat unique or somewhat different because Crawford Park is their primary Little League organization's maintenance or operation site. At that location, Hayden Little League does all maintenance. Fencing and repairs, dugout repairs, mowing, irrigation repair and maintenance, so that they are the exclusive operator, really. Little League, or the Hayden City operates some of their own programs at the end of the Little League organization season, but for the most part, Little League's the one operating out of that location. I think the other, and then Lakeland is unique yet again because they largely operate out of a nonprofit-owned site. The Lions Club in Rathdrum owns the ground where their Little League complex is, so they have basically a $1 a year type of an agreement to use that facility. So it's not the city that structures that. It's not city access and such. So that's kind of the framework and context. I stand for any questions that you may have on how we're operating, questions that you may have come up through kind of reporting of that, and then we'll get into the larger policy framework and discussion of where this group sees fees associated with activities and such, and anything that might be worth breaking out into a workshop. So, turn it over to you.
What are the total costs for the average player? as far as like our fees?
Our fees?
Yeah, because I mean, we can't really, we don't have any control over uniforms and equipment and stuff, but as far as like our portion, what does that cost the average person for a season?
We don't really have control over even what their numbers are and their turnout or what they, so, and yeah, there's really not a way for us to control that piece of it.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know,
Yeah, that was my only question.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they did share that was their estimation was $30 to $35 a year per player just for field access. Because I think they reported at the council meeting between 400 and 500 players annually.
Okay.
So,
And then how many games is a typical Little League season?
good question. Back in the day,
Right.
when you walked uphill both ways to school, I think we got about 20 games. So
Okay.
I don't know what they get now.
Okay.
I also remember there was a time where umpires were the dad that showed up first, and mom or dad that showed up first
Right.
ended up behind the plate, or maybe standing behind the mound, and now they're paid umpires for this sort of activity. So lots changed, and really it just comes down to what works for Post Falls now, what
Okay.
works to represent their interests and other interests as a whole. So I think that's the bigger part of the larger discussion at this point is, do you see anything highlighted with what we are doing that is worthy of change?
If the Little League wasn't using those fields, would they be used a lot?
I believe they would. I don't know if they'd be used as consistently as Little League. They do a great job. They have got
I
a
believe that.
powerful program in our community, and it's a legacy, right? Like it's been operating for 40 plus years that way, and I think the MOU largely honors that. We do have a large number of users, and from time to time, we've had users that have had to move outside of the Post Falls community that are, residents here that are finding homes across the border into Washington, in Lakeland. So there is a need, and that was largely articulated during the Tullamore Sports Complex master planning effort.
Yep.
So, and the other kind of highlight on the need was around Brett James Field, because it's the one field in our inventory. I guess maybe that context is also worth noting. City manages five locations. Brett James is a full baseball field, 90-foot bases. 19th Street has primarily 60-foot bases, but it is also has 70-foot bases installed. Chase Sports Complex has got two youth baseball fields, 60 and 70-foot bases, and then Corbin Park. Corbin Park has largely been the one that has absorbed any or out other than Little League user groups. So that one tends to see the lowest use, but it's also doesn't have a fence. We only have the two fields that have outfield fences at this point, 19th Street and Brett James. The others are all without an outfield fence in our inventory. Community-wide, there are 4 total full baseball fields, 2 at the high school, Brett James, and then there's another full baseball field at Ponderosa Elementary. So that resource is a little limited. And the school district has 3 fields at Frederick Post Elementary that are all youth-sized. There's another youth-sized field at Ponderosa Elementary, and the high school has 3 youth softball / youth baseball-sized fields and 2 full baseball fields there. So.
I don't think we have any further questions. Cool.
So I think that the last part of that was just the cost recovery. Where does this sit? Like it's hard to dive into one particular user group because you don't want to call out how we're going to do this with this one group because there's a lot of nuance. But how are we going to handle these sorts of things on a more broad and general basis. And in our 2020 Park and Rec Master Plan, we had an outlined goal in our midterm, which we're now in, to establish a cost recovery and resource allocation policy document or framework, if you will. So if that's something that's of interest, we can do some work on that. Chris and I have had discussions, and he has some experience with working through that process with the previous board. So if that's something you see as a worthy effort, it would be one of those cross-division type items. It would certainly be a larger discussion than just the park access. It would also be something that Tracy would want to be heavily involved in as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And so let's see. Did that cover? That was. Where are we at here? That was the citizens' comment. So administrative staff reports. The park maintenance division report, please. Not off the hook yet.
All right, here we go.
Had me confused there, Brian.
I was just ready to sit down.
Sorry about that.
I got pictures for you this time, so we're doing a little better. All right, so similar to what Preston does with the Urban Foresters Report, wanted to just stand up here on a regular basis and start to open up kind of that repeated pattern of what it is we're doing on the maintenance side. So you have a little picture into our routine world as we approach our summer season. So seasonal prep, that's the job of a park maintenance worker through the winter months, is getting everything you possibly can ready for when it's go time. So a lot of that is getting through our equipment, getting through our tables and furnishings, really touching whatever we possibly can that hasn't been winterized, and doing our best to make sure it's armored for the public, ensuring that bolts are tight on picnic tables, that we've got fresh stain on things that need to be stained, and fresh coats of paints on things that can be weather tight and conditioned. So that's largely our work. And then this past month, we're seeing sports field netting going up, our hard surface court netting going up, and portable restrooms starting to be deployed to the sites where we've got recreation programs happening. We also have been active in onboarding a new autonomous mower. I don't know if I've highlighted that at a previous meeting or not, but we have 2 autonomous internal combustion machines. So still a gas-powered power unit that drives off of a hydraulic drivetrain. So it's a very similar platform to our team, but it has this little smart head on it that picks up GPS signals and can mow the interior of whatever you map a perimeter of. So we are trying to learn where that is going to be best deployed and where we're going to have to supplement. And largely where we're seeing that play out is it will likely be a big resource for us in replacing basically our wide area mowers. So the big batwing style mowers that you see the arms roll down at roughly 50% of the cost per piece of equipment. So we've got some equipment changes, equipment cost deducts if this all works well. Maybe a slightly less longevity out of this style of mower than the big wide area mower. So we'll report back as we learn more and find where the sweet spot is for that piece of equipment. And now that the snow never really showed up, so we were looking at this all winter, but spring cleanup is a big part of what we do this time of year. So there are mountains of pine needles out and about at the moment. As those pine needles get swept up and piled on the edge of the parks, we're getting out with our first round of fertilizer and broadleaf weed control application. And then we're also getting our spring pre-emergent applications down in our shrub beds to hopefully prevent shrub bed weeds for the rest of the season. Staff is out pressure washing things. This is a picture of Jess out today pressure washing a water feature. We have a number of events in the springtime that we're getting ready for, with one of them being tomorrow. So for the listening audience and anybody that you may know that has an interest in doing work alongside of us, we have a recruitment and job fair tomorrow afternoon at the Black Bay Depot. We also have our Easter egg hunt coming up on April 4th. And then just kind of talking about general staff operations. We moved a 6-day work week starting next week, and we move into a 7-day work week at the end of the month to start May. We've got a couple of facility enhancements that we've taken advantage of the mild weather, and we were able to go through and rebuild horseshoe pits down at Chameleon Park. And then as the weather starts to improve, you'll see us going through and trying to get through our 4-year cycle of restroom floor paint. Some challenges and opportunities. Baseball's certainly front of mind though last month. We've also got the American Legion group has expressed interest in a field improvement for possibly putting some batting cages in at the Sportsman's Park location, and also becoming a larger field user at that site as well. A month, 6 weeks ago, we were notified of a 1 million gallon water use at our South Freeway water feature. So at the corner of the freeway on-ramp here and Spokane Street. So currently that water feature is turned off, and we have not identified what it is. Historically, we've had the pump has worn out. We also learned when that pump was being replaced that the pump was eroding through the concrete basin that it was sitting on. So that is a potential subject of failure there. It's a little challenging. All of that has to be addressed by contract because it's confined space that is something beyond our comfort level and skill set to enter in that location. So more on that to come. Don't know for sure what direction that will head, but the other pending change is the news of potential widening of I-90 and how would that impact that feature. So as we learn more, we'll be back with an update on that, and that may end up hitting council before yourselves. And then we have a potential partnership with the 3rd Avenue Marketplace, our local food bank, to basically take over some operations that the school district was historically operating in the community garden. So that's coming forward as a draft MOU that legal is currently reviewing. Looking forward to the next 2 months, trying to find seasonal staff. So ongoing seasonal recruitment. They are the lifeblood to keep the parks up and running through the summer months. We'll be working through opening park restrooms and getting irrigation systems activated, continuing to get our sports fields up and running. Just general ongoing landscape maintenance tasks that we all experience at home. We just experience that on a larger scale. We've been active in upgrading our lock systems to a magnetic lock closure system throughout the park system. And we're hoping that this year is the last year for the locks portion of the locks and security piece of this equation. We'll still have some security cameras on those fixed buildings that will move into 27 pending budget. And then we start moving through prep for asphalt seal coat. And this is the list of sites that are on the list for 2026. We do this task on a 5-year cycle. And that's identified as the best way to prolong the life of that type of system. So we'll be seal coating here at City Hall. Syringa Park is due. Skate park parking lot, now that well house improvement is wrapping up, we'll be able to get back into that site and do the maintenance there. Community garden site, Prairie Trail, so that one's not 5 years old, but in the first 2 years of an asphalt system's life, you want to be trying to trap the fines as soon as you can. So typical maintenance practices in that first 1 or 2 years, conducting that work. And then the large one is a full reconstruction of the first mile or two of the Centennial Trail, so generally from State Line to Pleasant View. It will be over the course of 2 phases, but that is being funded out of the Joint Powers Group and some grant money that we wrote a grant as Joint Powers through Kootenai County to replace that section of trail that's now pushing 40 years. So, with that, any questions on what Parks Maintenance is up to?
No, that's awesome.
Thanks.
The, if I remember correctly, the Chase Field restroom had a fire or something a while back. Where are we at on that rebuild?
So that is under construction right now. The construction team is out kind of relocating utilities to accommodate that future restroom pad. I think we're done with plan review, or are we still in the plan review process for this structure? So while we can, we're getting utilities relocated. We've also taken advantage of the concrete around that building not being there to complete a maintenance project that's been on the list since I was a park worker, to loop the main line. So thankfully the construction team's been able to add that to the list. That'll dramatically improve the irrigation system at that 8-acre site. So excited to take advantage of that and see that come into fruition.
Yeah, cool. Very good. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Next on the list would be the Urban Foresters Report.
Good evening, members of the commission.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me. I'm Preston Hill, the Urban Forester. And so I just want to give you a little update of what we've been up to for the past month. You may have seen notification that there was some brush pile burning in Black Bay Park. We try to put the word out about that. This has become an every year occurrence, and this is a part of our natural area dead and dying tree removal process. Most of those dead trees are dead as a result of bark beetle activity. And so we try to do whatever we can to reduce the population of those bark beetles on the site so that they can't emerge in the spring and find new host trees. When we have good access to a site, we can haul that woody debris away or chip it up and disperse it on site or haul it away. When we don't have good access to a site, we have to burn that brush, basically to kill that population of bark beetles. Black Bay is one of those sites that's pretty rocky, pretty difficult access, at least where the trees are dying. And so we did a couple of days worth of that, I think, and that went very well this year. We've got it dialed in after doing this several times. I don't know if you noticed, we had a windstorm, so that kept us busy for a few days. Overnight on March 11th and 12th, we got called in about 3 a.m. to respond to trees down in the road. We were steady busy for about 12 hours in rights of way, doing cleanup work. And then we did have one large tree, the one up in the upper left there, that was crossing an intersection that it got tangled into some streetlight wires that we couldn't respond to that night. We had to wait for Vista to make that safe. We had to come back the next day to finish that one up. That was another 10 hours for that. And then we've been trickling through the city site damage since then. But we have now just finished up I say that. We finished up most of the windstorm damage. The only thing left on the list to do related to the windstorm is to survey our natural surface trails and clear those of any down trees. We've not done that yet. So windstorm took us off our game for a little bit, and then as you can see in that upper left photo, it was followed by a pretty wet snow that didn't make anything easier, of course. We have sourced a replacement future Christmas tree for City Hall. So I don't know if you remember, we lost our subalpine fir out in front here to balsam woolly adelgid, which we had been combating for a number of years. So the idea here was to locate a large conifer tree, larger than normal nursery size, that could be transplanted into one of the landscape beds out here. And so we did source one out of a nursery, a commercial nursery in Bonners Ferry. So it's about a 16-foot tall concolor fir. So we're pretty excited about that. We'll be planting that this spring. We've done a couple of relatively large volunteer projects. Daniel Lambert's heading these up. The two photos on the left there show a thinning project done by the Post Academy. So the Post Academy are future law enforcement officers. So they have a big service project that they're required to do as a part of their program. And so they thinned and reduced wildfire hazard fuels in about an acre of the community forest there that you can see. And this was, of course, right after the heavy wet snow. So they had to build a little warming fire there to keep their spirits up. And then the two photos on the right there, that's the monthly Post Falls, Friends of Post Falls Community Forest activity. There is a wide turnout along West Riverview Drive that has been growing in size and getting wider and wider, with more and more people parking there and using that as like a unofficial trailhead. And so we placed some Jersey barriers up there, and then to reduce that size, and the Friends of group spread some wood chips and woody debris and did some social trail decommissioning in that area. And then we are still chugging through the dead and dying tree removals. I think we have 2 sites left along the Corbin ditch, and then also Trailer Park Wave. But we're hoping to be done with that soon so we can move on to other spring tasks. That photo on the left there is Tyler. They found an opportunity to turn one of those dead standing trees into a wildlife habitat tree. And so that's what you see there, cutting the top of the tree off and then most of the limbs off, but still providing that snag for birds and mammals and insects to use. We only do that in areas where that is not going to pose a future risk to targets around it on the city sites. But we do consider it a benefit. So we're planning our upcoming spring events. 4th grade field trip, I think we talked about last time. That'll be coming up. We've got all 7 elementary schools, all the 4th graders at all 7 elementary schools coming out. Those are photos from last year. Program will be very similar, a guided hike through the woods. Talk about forest ecology, wildlife, geology, and the Parkway Fire. And then our Arbor Day celebration will be on May 2nd. Again, those are photos from last year. Got some educational sessions for folks. Last year we did pruning, arborist access into trees, climbing, and planting. This year we will do planting and pruning again. A little bit different than we did last year. We've got 100 trees about this same size that are available for attendees to take home. First come, first served. And then coming up here, we've got a couple of weeks scheduled to team up with the street department on street tree root pruning where they are in conflict with sidewalks. So the way this works is the street department comes and pulls those sidewalk panels, and then our team comes in and does the necessary root pruning. And then when we're done with that, the street department comes back in and pours and finishes new sidewalk panels in those places. It is a laborious task. And it does require us to do do 2 pull tests on every tree. So we apply a certain force on the crown of the tree before we do the root pruning, and that same force on the crown of the tree after we do the root pruning, and we measure the deflection of the tree. And if it's beyond a certain amount, then that means we have structurally weakened it with the root pruning too much, and then we remove the tree. But that doesn't happen very often. It's kind of a surprisingly low percentage of trees that get removed as a result of that. And we've got our normal annual list of sign clearance pruning throughout town. So just in case you don't know what a blocked stop sign looks like, there you go. We've got about 100 signs throughout the city that our street department inventories in the winter and lets us know that maintenance is required there. So we'll be moving through that. And then we're adding a 3rd trail map kiosk to the Camelin Park trailhead of the community forest. We've got 2 there now, 1 on either end, but there is a third trail access in the middle that currently has this older trail map from when this was only Camelin Trails and not the full community forest. So that will go away. A bench will be relocated, and a 3rd kiosk, just like the other 2, will be added there. That's kind of overdue, so we'll be happy to get it done. And that's all I have. What questions do you have for me?
On the storm damage cleanup, does the urban forestry department partner at all with the street department for any of that cleanup?
Yeah. So typically the street department is who responds first in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And then they call me if it's tree related. And so then we mobilize, and so usually it's the street department that gets the calls. They go look at the sites, and then they let me know about it. I serve as kind of like the one who creates the list and prioritizes the list for the crew. Not all obstructions are created equally. And then if we need larger equipment to haul the material out or pick up the material, like on that one large tree that was snow covered, they help us out with a loader and staff. And so they certainly did in this event and on that tree.
Cool.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
The only question I had. Thank you, Preston. Any further comments or concerns from the commission? No?
None?
Not for me.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. I adjourn the meeting.